Hello, everyone. Welcome to
Wow,
Dice Jailers. I'm Jordan,
I'm Bjorn.
and this week we are going to kind of talk through how we do our world building as DMs.
That's right.
But
Just call
before
me
we,
Bob because I'm gonna build it.
awful. Give up on this episode already. Uh,
Yeah.
but before we get into that, thank you so much for bearing with us when we took our week break. Because we needed it. Our brains were kind of fried. Uh,
Yes.
and
And
so,
thankfully, it coincided with a heat wave
yup, that was great. We
because the
should,
temperature last
yeah.
Thursday, there is a 0% chance I would have wanted to sit here in front of a camera where people could see my insanely sweaty self. Because I know what I
Right, and
looked like
just
on
see
Thursday.
all the drips,
Oh,
and
man.
just it'll be the next Jonathan Goff spit bubble.
It was bad. Bad. No. And that wasn't
uh,
even the worst day, but whoo.
no, because Monday, y'all. I hope everybody stayed cool and was able to stay away from getting heat exhaustion and heat
Yeah.
stroke.
Stay hydrated.
It was a rough couple of days, and it might happen again this summer.
Oh, that's no one needs that. No
Yeah,
one,
no one does, but it
no,
might happen again.
it might. And I will say in all this, shout out to the public libraries
Oh
for
yeah.
putting up like they did because they're like, we have air conditioning.
Hmm.
Come hang out with the books.
Yep.
Like that was a really cool move on their
Which
part. It was
I
really
I definitely did for a day.
yeah,
Because I've got a library right around the corner from my place, and I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna go look through some random books for a bit and just not be death hot.
yeah. I was very fortunate on Monday because I work in a clinic. Um, our lab has to stay cool,
Yep.
and the back area where all the exam rooms are has to stay at a comfortable temperature. So that's where I spent almost all of Monday, and I can honestly say it wasn't too bad. Where I work
Hmm.
up front, I'm right by a southwest facing window.
Oof.
So during the latter half of the day, that sucked, and I was sweating a lot. But
Yeah.
there, I drank lots of water. I went to the near the exam rooms as often as I could, and survived. Survived. They're like, "Why is this sweaty guy from up front back here?" And they're like, "He works here. We want him to
It's
not die."
right. Yeah, and like I'm glad that like I've got a sunken into the ground slightly apartment. So like my place was never that bad. But the thing I've learned about my place is because of how it's situated, once my place gets hot, it is very difficult to cool down. However,
That is
it takes a while for it to get hot.
very similar to this apartment. You've been here
Yeah.
enough times. It is a largely brick exterior. I don't know if people know this. There are things made of bricks called ovens.
Yep.
Yeah, so it retains heat really well. Um, the first part of any day was not bad, but it was that latter half, especially around when you want to go to sleep, that it's just roasting up in here.
Yeah, that
Um,
that tracks.
yeah, the upside I will say, on a sunny winter day, it actually doesn't get that cold in here.
That's nice.
So
Uh
yeah, that's the trade-off.
yeah.
Winters aren't so bad, but summers can be a little sweltering.
So what have you been getting up to in the 2 weeks that we had off from the show?
Well, I talked about that world building deck that I got,
Mhm. Mhm.
Story Engine. I've been playing with that some, just starting to build some blocks for our next campaign. Just trying to get myself back to writing. Like I
Mhm.
remembered I used to write a lot, late elementary school, early middle school. Like I wrote a ton. Were I that age now, I would absolutely be contributing to fanfic forums. Like that's
Oh,
the kind
yeah.
of stuff I wrote oodles of. And I mean, the papers are all long gone, and I'm sure it was terrible. So I'm kind of glad for that. But the fact that I've been getting back to writing, I realize that I've kind of missed it. And then also,
Mhm.
because I can't help myself, I recently backed a couple Kickstarters that ended today, which are going to be really cool for world building. One of them's just got all sorts of magical items and magical item shops and prices for things. And it actually has
Prices
shop.
for things?
I know, the hardest damn thing to find. And they went through the effort of pricing stuff out and adding some of their own stuff, so I
Yeah.
can actually have some magic item shops if I want. And then another one is this really cool monster hunting book that's got just scads of new monsters in it and mechanics for
Ooh.
hunting them and harvesting their stuff to build weapons out of. So yeah, I'm a sucker. I gotta have more books. So I gotta clear some room on that shelf over there and see where things are gonna go.
I feel
Um,
that.
yeah, yeah. And I have been sweating a lot. There's been,
Yep. Because, the aforementioned heat wave.
100%. What about your bad self?
I mean, besides the heat wave, I did, as per usual in a week, I recorded a couple auditions and sent them
Yep.
off, and we'll see what happens from those. Uh, and I rearranged my place a little bit, as you can kind of see behind me. I moved a lot of things around to consolidate because I'm trying to get an actual things for my friends to sit on if they come over, because
Sure.
people can do that safely now,
I
uh,
know.
which is wild, and
Yeah, I
I
saw
it's
people
weird.
out and about without masks today, and I my initial reaction was just to be horrified.
Hmm.
And I'm like, no, wait, we can do that now.
Yeah,
We can.
no, like I last night I went to the bar and did karaoke safe, like without a mask,
Wow.
and the bar didn't close till 2 a.m. Because that's also a thing that's back. Is
Yeah.
the bars can stay open till 2 a.m. again, which is wild. So like I was there and I closed out a bar at 2, which I haven't done since pre-pandemic because everything's been, closing at, 10 and then 11 and then midnight.
Right.
And so that's wild. Also, I decided to jump onto TikTok,
Yeah.
and I have made too many videos.
Sure.
It's not healthy, and I am addicted, and I'm
Okay.
okay with it. Uh,
Right.
but also being on there helped me clue into a thing in the world of tabletop role playing games that I would not have known because I don't really pay attention to headlines very often.
Sure.
But apparently, Gary Gygax's son is a piece of shit.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
one of them is. 'Cause he's got like two or three sons. There's
that's
one of them
true. But
massive.
the one that's trying to restart TSR as a company,
Yeah.
total
I
piece of shit. Burn that company to the ground. Do not buy their things. Honestly, we should petition that they're not allowed at Gen Con because no one needs that level of transphobia in their tabletop games.
That's the truth. And but also make sure you're burning the correct TSR to the ground because
Yes.
apparently there are actually two TSRs. And where so for those who don't know what TSR is, before Wizards of the Coast owned Dungeons and Dragons, it
Hmm.
was with TSR. It's a company name. And you would only try and start up TSR if you're trying to get nostalgia money from people who are like 45 plus,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I mean, I'm 40, but TSR D&D, that's even a bit before my time. So
Hmm.
when I came into it, I believe WotC owned it at that
Yes.
point. So there was one that existed, and then I guess some of their paperwork lapsed as far as the trademark. And so
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Dick,
yeah.
Dick Brains jumped on and they wanted to get it, and they've just been absolutely horrible. And I mean, let's not mince words. Gary Gygax himself fucking sucked. Like
Yeah.
he was a dick. Like he talked about how couldn't imagine women in gaming and they wouldn't understand it. This, that, and the other. Dude was a
Yeah.
fucking misogynist. That's a fact. However, he's dead, and D&D. What's so great about it, because it says this in the Dungeon Master's Guide, and we talked about this before. You're allowed to do whatever you want with it.
Hmm.
So if you know that these, amazing trans characters, just as one example that you want to create, that would really just shatter these Gygaxes to their souls. I mean,
Yep.
that's an even more reason to create them.
Which that kind of thing confuses it confuses the fuck out of me why and how they're so anti-trans and shitty, because so many of the things, like even original Gary Gygax will say, uh created an elven deity that's gender fluid.
Yeah.
Like, you created a deity that's gender fluid, but you're gonna tell me that like people can't be? Like, fucking dumb.
And the other thing is, like, the main mythology that so many of these want to just dry hump, Norse mythology. They all want to be all about it, and they'll talk about how much they love Loki. Y'all, in the actual Norse mythology, Loki is gender fluid. Like the fact
Yeah,
that Marvel Studios just made that canon, um, they're centuries behind on this. And
yeah,
besides,
literally.
there's a legend where I want to say like Loki turned into a horse and had
Uh,
sex with another horse, got
yep,
impregnated by that other horse, and
yep,
then gave birth to a horse.
yep,
This is in the myths, but
yep.
I mean, go off about
Yeah,
your fucking nonsense.
yeah.
Like
But anyway, uh, yeah, you know, what is it? Ernie Gygax, I believe he's a piece of shit.
that's the one. That's the
Yeah,
one.
Ernie Gygax is a piece of shit. His new attempt at TSR should die and be burned all to the 9 fiery hells.
Agreed.
And if you have some energy and effort to support Meg the Sorceress, uh, that is their TikTok handle, and like support Meg, uh, because taken a lot of fire for being like the voice that was latched onto of calling out TSR on their bullshit and
Yeah.
calling out Ernie on his bullshit. And it started off with an honest question that was then answered with, "We hate everyone."
Basically,
Yeah. So definitely support Meg online in any ways that you can, even if it's just watching Meg's content.
yeah,
Uh,
like, and that's the thing to really hit on is there are a lot of cool people online creating a lot of cool things and doing a lot of just legit, honest, good work. Support them. Like even if all you could do by supporting them is liking and sharing, it
it's
helps.
huge.
It helps boost their algorithms. Like you may have a follower count of 2 people, but that one extra engagement of someone sharing, it does help boost
Yeah,
the algorithms, and it
it's
can
big.
help them get over that precipice of getting more exposure. So do it. Like
Yeah.
just spread the word far and wide
You know,
because there's
help people help people build their fan base if you can. Uh, because at the end of the day, one of the hardest things to do is build a thing up.
it really is.
You don't want to jump on that or anything, or
No,
just
I
gonna let
don't.
that one hang? All right. Well, I
Yeah.
tried to segue. Our
You like
plan for the episode.
you like how you
You
just
just
set one on the tee and I just kind of stare at it and I look
you
back at you.
real bad.
Okay, no, it's not completely broken. I can fix it, Felix. We'll be fine.
No, no,
Yeah, yeah,
no. I'm not gonna help you with yours now because you did
that's
that.
fine. You don't have to.
Fine, I'll
Wor-
pout.
yes, world building. There's a lot that goes into it,
Yep,
and I think I think the biggest problem people run into with it is they think too big from the beginning.
absolutely.
You'll get
And
people who are
I'm guilty of that.
yeah,
Sorry,
they're like,
there's a
I'm gonna
thing on my wall, and for some reason it won't come off. I'm just gonna try to ignore it.
good luck. But yeah, people will be like, I want to homebrew this whole world and we'll have all these grand ideas. And they have the entire planet designed and planned out before their players hit session 1. And
Hmm.
then finally they start playing and the players walk into their first town. And all of a sudden the DM has this moment of horror where they don't really have that town fleshed out.
Yep.
They created a complete geography. They have a calendar. They've completed all the financial systems and the names of coins in all the different
Hmm.
nations, but they
Yeah.
didn't flesh out the starting area. And
You
that's
you built the forest and not the trees.
exactly. And those trees are really important because let's face it, you may have the fortress or whatever that your players are going to end the campaign in fully fleshed out and designed.
Yeah.
If your campaign's not going to end for 1, 2, 3 years, my friends, you have time to design that.
Yep.
Time.
But
Um,
so when thinking about like world building design, where do you usually start?
I'm very old school with this. I start in a town.
Okay.
Uh, it's a familiar setting. I
Well,
want there to be
not like the starting location, I mean, but like when you're thinking about
oh,
building an entire world, like what's your first step? Or
my
is your
first
first step a town?
my first step is it's gonna be 2 parts. It's going to be a region, like somewhere on a continent
Hmm.
of going, where is the story going to begin? So let's just use North America as an example. If I were to use North America,
Can we
and
not
because
ruin it?
I mean, well, good luck. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try, but I'm gonna go with that's where I live. So I'm gonna use North America because I have a good frame of reference. And I decide, okay, I'm gonna start in the Pacific Northwest because that's where I'm from, and I
Right.
have the most frame of reference for it, and I can do research on other areas as my players venture out. So
Right.
then I'm gonna think about time of year, I'm gonna think about geography, I'm gonna think about climate. I'm going to build with that, and then I'm going to decide where the closest civilization is to where the players are.
Right.
And that civilization can be anything from a campfire in the woods to a bustling city.
Right.
Probably somewhere in between. I'm probably going to go very classic, go with a town, something that has just, you know, the bare basics, but, is minimal overall.
Probably has a tavern with
Yeah,
either the word pony in the name or a number of chair legs.
something like that. I'm probably going to start there. Um, I mean, that said, if somebody's reading, like Eberron Rising from the Last War, and they read over the amazingness that is the floating city of Sharn, um, nothing against starting a campaign in a massive city like that, like
Absolutely not.
Sharn, Waterdeep, Neverwinter. You can start in these bustling civilizations, and frankly, you can have an entire campaign without leaving one. But
Absolutely.
I like to start small because I like to start my characters at low levels for my
Right,
players.
right, right, right.
So it gives them something to look forward to. And there may be mentions of bigger cities. And it's a lot of, Clark Kent growing up on the farm in Smallville and then eventually going to Metropolis and becoming Superman. Like
Okay.
that's kind of the vision I really build a lot of my campaigns around.
I get that. See, for me, world building, I first start just with like whatever genre I'm gonna be working in, because that tells me exactly where I'm gonna place, like in the
Right.
world, the first thing. I much like you, I always like build like just the little area that I know we're going to start, and kind of fill things in as they go.
Right.
I know I really like to use world generators online, and like I'll just take like I'll take my genre in my brain, and then I'll be like, okay, we've got this. So say like, we're doing a pirate campaign, so it's gonna need to be coastal. It's gonna need to be islands, and then I'll world generate a map with some program online, and then like, all right, we'll start here and start just futzing with the generated map. Uh, but I don't really fill out the details of all these other places until my
Right.
players are gonna get there.
And I think that's an important point of making sure you don't have too much. I may have a little information about some of those places where
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, apparently there's some trouble happening over in, insert name of the city to the west.
Right.
And just those adventure hooks to throw out there to see what they bite on. And even if they don't go to that town where I say, oh, there's some trouble happening there, I'll write a note to myself, my DM notes, and go, hey, let's
Mm-hmm.
remember there was trouble there. So when they eventually go there, I can decide what that was.
Yep. The
But
trouble was a werewolf attack, and now the city is dead.
yeah, and it's full of lycanthropes because you
Yeah.
didn't go there and deal with it.
Yep.
And that can be fun.
How often do you when you're running games and you're like setting up worlds, how often do you think about like, well, characters didn't go here, so now I'm gonna make it terrible.
It honestly, it depends on what I had there, and it also
Mm,
depends on what else I have in my notes of things I want to create.
word.
Um, I know I've mentioned the Dungeon Dudes on here multiple times. One of my favorite pieces of advice they gave about building a dungeon is if there's a door, whatever is on the other side of that door doesn't exist until your players open the door.
Mm-hmm.
So it literally doesn't matter what you have in your notes. Anything can be behind that door until they open it or look beyond it using like a spell or something.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember when you're world building also, because if you fall in love with one of your plot hooks, as I have done, I think every DM has, you've
Oh,
written something and you
absolutely.
go, I know this is good, or I love it, or you know your players will love it. And you're going, I'm going to put it right here in this city because they said 2 sessions ago that's where they're going next. And they'll come to this and it'll be great. Then, right as they leave the town they're in, they go, you know, let's go west instead. I heard there was something interesting out there.
Hmm.
And you're panicking and you're fumbling because you really wanted to have this cool thing. I just pick it up and I
You
move it
just,
west.
yeah, just let's just take this plot hook and move it somewhere else.
Yeah. And I know there are some storytellers who consider that cheating. And the reason I don't is I think of any movie or any book
Yeah,
of the main character or main characters that they follow. The story followed them because of the journey they went on.
absolutely.
D
Also,
and D, yeah,
the notion of like cheating at storytelling, no, that's not a
right,
fucking thing.
exactly. Like your players haven't been there, so there's nothing there
Like,
yet.
how can you cheat at storytelling? It's
Yeah,
storytelling. Like,
like
there's no goddamn rules really.
yeah, like don't change things around arbitrarily from places they've been. Like, don't just
Yeah,
be like, oh no, that's a crater. There was never a town there. They're like, no, we were in the town. If you offer an explanation, like maybe it was a
like,
mirage or they hallucinated the whole thing,
or it's a crater now.
yeah, that stuff can be great. But if you're just like, nope, changed it, was bored, then that's dumb.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I'll move shit around all the time. And sometimes if I leave some information out there and nothing is done about it, I will later sometimes have something done about it, either in the case of um, I offered in our campaign, I offered you guys some monster hunting contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all didn't want to do them. You felt you had other more pressing things,
Mm-hmm.
and that was fine. Um, it just so happened then that because your characters didn't do it, other people later took those contracts. So when you actually had a use for it, because you're like, oh, we could harvest these things for this ritual,
Yep.
it was like, oh no, no, no. When you guys left, about a week later, some other folks came through. They picked those up.
Yep.
So that's more what I will do. Unless I put this real ominous notion of, hey, you better go here, something bad's gonna happen. I won't punish players for not going, be like, oh, see all the people who died, you didn't go here. Like I won't do that needlessly. But if
You
I
are
flat out say,
you are
there's
a much
monsters,
nicer DM than I am. I try to make something happen. Like, I like my stories with a whole lot of, hey, no matter what you do, you can't save everyone. Uh because I'm a monster. Uh and so a whole lot of my like plot hooks and things, if they get left undone, oh, something bad will happen if they go back.
just wait for my next campaign. I think you'll like the different flavor.
I can't wait. I I actually spent some time thinking about my character for campaign 2 like
Oh,
yesterday, and oh my god.
this first one is the level 1 to 20. Everybody's these mega powerful heroes in the end, and
Yep.
maybe you'll save everyone. The next one will be a little dark and dirty. It'll be a little
Good.
more visceral.
It
Like,
fits my character story better.
yeah. So when I'm building these places, I want to start with a location, and then what I generally do is I try and have some location names like in a notebook, or
Oh
have
yeah.
a fantasy generator, like a name generator or a
Oh yeah.
tavern generator. Like those are just
I was
godsend.
just about to ask if you had any particular tools that you like to use.
I like to use generators, and I like to
Yeah.
use them before the session because all of a sudden going like, "Yep, there's an inn. It's got a name. It's a good name. You
It's
keep
a really good
refreshing.
name.
Every name that comes up sucks."
Oh
And so,
yeah. Yeah, definitely when you're building things and you're using generators, definitely plan out the time to re-roll the names.
yep,
Cuz some of the names are not good, or they're
yeah,
just really easily turned to innuendo,
yeah,
and you
which isn't
don't.
always bad.
Yeah, it's not always bad. Or like quickly switch to a nickname of something dumb.
Yep,
Because there's nothing worse than like having your big city planned out, and your player, usually the bard, will look at the map and go, "Huh, so the next town we're going to is Bonerfart."
Yep.
Because
You're like,
like
no, no.
the name's just like an anagram for that, or just something like
And you're like,
something
no,
close to it.
it's Bonnerfort. You're like,
Yeah,
yes, Bonnerfart.
yeah. It's Bonerfart. No, it's Bonerfart.
Yeah, and it will be it will be Bonnerfart forever.
It'll
That's
be all over.
yeah, yeah, and that's when you just kind of seethe and you imagine killing that character in your head.
Yep.
You don't kill them for that because
You think about doing the classic rocks fall, you die.
you
Uh,
do. But yeah, I like to have a list of names for establishments, and I like to have a list of names for NPCs just
mhm.
set up. And I won't necessarily set up who they're going to be. When I first started designing towns and whatnot, I realized I totally overdid it, where I had all these details about all these locations
Mhm.
and everyone who worked there, and just what they were good at, what they were bad at, what their passions were, something unique about all of them. And then
Yeah.
I realized some of these NPCs my players will talk to one time and never see again.
Yep.
And if I put an hour worth of work into that NPC, waste of time,
Absolutely.
absolute waste of time.
I
So,
definitely have like most of my NPCs that I use are old characters of mine,
oh
or
yeah,
like characters that I've built for one shots and stuff, and I'll just
exactly.
plop them in as an NPC and be like, yeah, they used to do this and they've retired and now they're
Yeah,
here. Uh, and that's helpful to me because then like in my brain I already have a personality for the NPC and whatnot, and I can snap into it pretty quick. Uh, Another thing that I do for NPCs is that I will have just like a set of names that I've randomly generated, and then a couple blocks of like these are important character hooks if they decide to talk to the NPC.
right.
So I don't have particular like hooks and interests tied to a name, you know?
Yeah, I try and only flesh out the NPCs that I think are going to be extremely important or um well
So
I think
basically you flesh out every NPC that you give either hot voice or describe as hot.
yeah, basically. I
Yeah,
mean,
that
you're not
yeah.
wrong. So every tiefling, um,
Yep.
all tieflings are hot. I don't make the rules. It's just how it is. But I really try and make sure that the ones that are more fleshed out are the ones I think that my players will interact with more. Or I'll just have this like list of traits and it'll be, oh, they're talking to the mayor of this town a lot. And they really seem to like them. Okay, I'm going to take these traits and connect them to this mayor because
Hmm.
now this will be a place they'll be coming back to. Um,
Right.
I've also learned not to give stat blocks to every friggin' NPC. I've
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen I've seen people who go that far. There's a commoner stat block. Like
You
there
can just
are
use that.
yeah, there's so many great stat blocks in the monster manual right at the back where it's
Mm.
just different types of humanoids. Utilize those, and if you're like, oh well, this isn't just some random soldier. They used to be an adventurer. I'm like, cool. Give them a +2 to to one whatever
Hmm.
their key stat is. Strength, con, dex, or if they're a caster, whatever their caster stat is. Give them
Hmm.
another +1 bonus, and then just give them one class feature. So if you think they might get into combat and aid your party, if
Yep.
they bust out an action surge, your party be like, oh, cool, they're a fighter. If they give a bardic inspiration, that becomes a cool moment. But you don't have to go and roll up a
Yeah.
bard or a fighter for that. Just
On
give them.
the other hand, though, a good way to prevent your players from taking all of your world that or all of your city that you've built and steal everything out of it and leave, uh, make yourself a fighter to be your stock guard, and like
Yep,
use that stat block for every town's guard, but just you know make the town guards just like a level or two higher than your party.
yep,
So if they try and start some shit and the guards show up, they can actually get stopped and thrown in prison because
exactly.
they couldn't steal things well. And I'm not saying that that should be a deterrent because you don't want your players to steal ever, but they've got to earn it.
And also, it needs to motivate the story. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's got to move things forward. Like if you are stealing things, that's fine,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
have it be
rogues.
more than like, well, but I'm playing a rogue, so I steal everything, and I go, oh, you're boring. Um,
But I steal everything. Okay, you're gonna get caught.
exactly. Like it's going to happen because
And
to
then the
me,
plot hook is a jailbreak, bud.
which nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, we've done like what, 3, 4 in your campaign?
Something like that. I love that stuff. It's fun. Um,
We need to pull a proper heist sometime in the game.
you guys really do. You guys really need one. Probably the next campaign might have a
Yeah,
heist. You guys are too high level for a heist now. There'd be
that's
no way
true.
to. Yeah,
Well, and also with our character personalities for this campaign, the closest to a heist was when we broke Thomas Pinch out of prison.
yeah. And frankly, you have a bard in the party who has the wish spell.
Yeah.
I wish I had that item. Got it, guys.
Yep.
Like, pretty simple.
Yeah.
Um,
Anyway,
the
world building.
yes, the other thing
Uh,
I really try and do with world building, honestly, is I think about what the population of. Because I'm going with this whole starting
yes.
town is. I think about what they're going to be populated by. It's very cool when you go to a massive city in D&D and every single race you can think of, including some monstrous races, are milling about this city in all sorts of ways. And you're just like, whoa, like there's a human, there's a minotaur, and there's a satyr, and there's a
And there's a
loxodon.
Loxodon.
Yeah. Oh wow, and there's a drow, there's a svirfneblin, like
Or
all those.
why is this city all Loxodon?
Yeah.
Huh.
Like it can be so cool when you
I
have that
feel
incredible
small.
melange. But
Yeah.
I don't like it when every little town is like that. I
Yeah.
think your smaller ones, you've got to think about the geography. And so to me, if this is like a mountainous town, I'm gonna go, okay, well, the majority of what's gonna make it up are going to be dwarves and Goliaths.
Most likely.
Because those are the races that generally live at those higher altitudes
You
and
know who
colder.
it's not gonna be? Centaurs.
Correct. You're not
Do
gonna
not put centaurs on a goddamn mountain.
and if you do, put one. Just
just
one.
one.
Give them a good reason for being there.
It's
Give them a really good reason.
yes, I was with an adventuring party once. We came up the mountain to solve a quest, and I could not get back down. The limitations of hooves. So now I run this bar.
Yep. And if you make a long face joke, I'll kick you the fuck out.
Literally.
Yes. Because hooves.
See, there's one thing that I want to mention that a
Yeah.
buddy of mine did that is it can be seen by some as a little overkill. I fucking love it, and it motivates one of the ways that I world build as well. Is that I wait for my players to tell me their character backstories
Sure.
before I really get into building the world, so
Which
that
is
I can
smart.
put things around their backstory rather than trying to slam the backstory into the world.
Yeah.
And a thing that a buddy of mine did for one of my first, actually no, my first long run, my first long running D&D game that I ever played. When he gave us like because we were in college, and he gave us Christmas break to like he gave us this like questionnaire that was mostly about our characters' backstories, but it was also like, all right, what was the place your character grew up like?
Right.
And he really let us like build and influence our own like characters' upbringings and things. And as long as they didn't clash with each other, we were able to like it was a thing that was there. Like we had our rogue who modeled himself after Batman. He put together Gotham, like his Gotham. And it eventually ended up being a plot hook where we went back to his hometown, and it had been taken over by his nemesis crime lord, and we took him down and reestablished like law in the city, which was cool.
Which is a great point. And don't do all the world building work by yourself.
Yeah,
Let
you don't
your
need to.
players help you. when they say, yeah, this is my backstory, and I'm thinking this and this and this and this, start figuring out where that's going to go.
Hmm.
Because a world building's a lot like a jigsaw puzzle, where once some of the pieces start going into place, a
Oh, it's
lot of the rest of it
beautiful.
really comes together for you. And again, like you said about the rogue you played with, you can come up with some great plot hooks
Yeah, like
because of
that was a
that.
whole arc that we did because of because our rogue wanted to be Batman.
Yeah, and if, um, we talk about Critical Role on here regularly. I'll
Yep.
bring them up again. In campaign one, I think the best story arc of the whole campaign was when they went to Whitestone to deal with the Briarwoods.
Yes.
I could watch the Briarwood arc again, and I
Oh,
probably
absolutely.
I think it's brilliant. It's great storytelling, but it was completely motivated because one member of their party had a vendetta. It
Yep.
was in his backstory, and he had this score to settle.
Yeah.
There was, of course, there was a feast that brought everyone together that sort of kicked it off,
Yeah.
and Lord and Lady Briarwood were seen there, and it's like, oh shoot, and that was their first realization that there was a Derolo still alive. But
Hmm.
what a great moment! Like as a DM, if one of your players gives you this backstory where they would clearly want vengeance for something, or justice, or
Yeah.
retribution, or whatever, that's just a gift. And the important thing about that gift is don't open it too early.
Absolutely.
Gotta
That's
hang
yeah,
on.
that's the caution on like using your players to world build for you, which again,
Yep.
you absolutely should because it
Yep.
takes a lot of the work off your shoulders. It also lets your players feel more it makes your players feel more invested in
Yeah.
everything because they will forget what they told you.
They will.
Uh and so like they'll off mention while they're talking about their character backstory with you, like, yeah, my character and we had this friend that we grew up together and then we both went our separate ways and then oh, that friend's coming back.
Yeah.
uh
Listen when your players are interacting
uh
with each other. Listen to
because
them
your
talk
players
about their
will
backstory.
forget.
Yeah. Write those notes down.
And
And
so then it hits their subconscious with just like, oh wait, yeah, this was important.
yeah. For me, as far as the story and world building, I think levels 1 through 5, I am solely responsible for as a DM
Mm-hmm.
because those building up your character levels. I don't care what class you're playing. When you hit level 5, you get excited.
Yep.
Every class gets something
which it,
awesome
which is
at
a
level
thing to
5.
note, like when you're building your world, take into account what level you're starting at,
Yep.
because you do not need to start at level 1. i
You
do
don't need
believe
to.
I believe that new players should do it at least once,
Yes.
but if you are playing with a bunch of people that have already played before, start them at level 5. Fuck it.
Yeah. Unless you have a good reason for them to be at those low levels, and maybe you do,
Yep.
you can completely skip them.
Yep. Because it's also
If you
much easier to make a character backstory when you've got a couple levels underneath you.
It does. For me personally, I think level 2 is the best starting point. I like
See,
to
for
have
me, I think it's level 3.
I like to have a level 0.5 where everyone's level 1. This is for a
Mm.
campaign. Everyone's level 1, and you just get to feel out this new character in a
Yeah.
mostly safe environment. And
I
that's
just like everyone starting with their subclass because I know for me when I'm making characters, the subclass is usually a big part of the identity of the character.
right, right.
Uh, but that's just how I build things. Which leads me to giving giving your towns and your areas of geography personality. Uh,
Yes,
there are things I like to do with planning where like I take into account the geography and the weather because that is going to influence the mood of the town. It's going to influence the general disposition
disposition.
of the people. It's also gonna change and dictate traditions. And oh, traditions! That was the thing I wanted to talk about. Build holidays into your game.
Yes,
Uh, and I know I've talked many a time on how much I love making in-game festivals, and running in-game festivals because they're great ways to give your party items and kind of give them a relaxed arc, so to speak.
Yes.
Just like, hey, you're having a feast and a battle of the bards and, you know, a brawling tournament where no one dies. Like,
Yes.
uh, but festivals are great
Take the
because
danger
also,
away sometimes.
what?
To take the danger away sometimes.
Exactly. But like those traditions and those things and like holidays, because then you can have an NPC just like ask one of your players, hey, what's your favorite holiday? Is it like the Neverfrost? Is it the Great Melting Day? Is it Harvest Day? Like, and make up random. Also, just making up random names for holidays is fun,
Yep. Yeah.
and making up lore for random holidays is super fun.
It's a
Uh,
delight. And I would say, sort of tacking onto that, make sure there is at least something or someone interesting in every single town you
mhm.
create. If it's
Don't just make pass through towns, because
yeah,
I know it's definitely a trap that DMs can fall into, especially when you're doing longer campaigns that are maybe spread out over a large area, and you've got those travel times, and travel can be really fun. It can also be really slow and really boring,
it can.
depending on how you manage it. Uh, and one of the things that some DMs will do is like, well, this is a major trading highway, so it would make sense for there to be a town, like a small town or a rest stop every like day of travel. But if you're going to do that, make those towns have something worthwhile.
Yeah.
They're
And
not. You can't just treat them like a pit stop, even though they are.
exactly. And if you aren't going to have something worthwhile there, then figure out maybe why there is only one central hub.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the roads are so dangerous that no one sets up outposts along them. And it's
Yep.
just one central trading location where everyone can watch each other's back, or it's in a location that's better defensible. Like, think about some of
Absolutely.
those things. Because and again, that'll start giving you other lore to work with. Why
Yeah.
are the roads so dangerous?
Yeah. It's one of the greatest things of world building is that like you said earlier, how things are just kind of like a puzzle. Because once you start building one little thing here, it'll inform all these other things, and you can let it. Because I mean, worlds are interconnected. I mean, sending is a spell that exists in D&D. Like, you've got magical texting. All right,
Yes.
you don't have to make everything like cut off and split and like, well, this country's here and this country's here and they're completely different, even though there's not even really a geographical divider between them. Like, no, that would make no sense. Unless they're at war, there would be trade, there would be shared traditions, there would be opinions on the other's traditions of like, yeah, that's really cool, but for some reason, they don't eat ham for their winter miss. They eat turkey. Weird.
Yeah, like and stuff like that can be great when you have like just those little just uh
Yup.
differences in culture. Or and this is one of the big world building things I wanted to speak on. um One of the most common things you will see, and you'll hear people say, dwarves and elves hate each other.
Ah, boring.
It is. It's so boring if you just go, all dwarves and all elves hate each other. Because I'm going to say, well, in your
Well,
world, why do they?
yeah.
And if like, they just do, I'm like, no, that's
Uh,
boring. If you tell me elves and dwarves hate each other, I'm bored. However, if your response is, there was a treaty signed in the Evershadow 800 years ago, and an offering was supposed to be made every year, and the dwarves have not made their offering, and thus the forest has begun to recede, and the elves will not forget, and the elves will not forgive. And I go, now I'm hooked.
yep. Now I
Now
care.
I'm in. Tell me more about the Evershadow. I want to
Yep.
know everything about this, because that's the kind of thing that seems more organic. Where you're like,
Yeah.
no, this is either political or religious or an ideological just
Mm-hmm.
difference, and that's why they don't
Like
mesh.
there has to be a reason, and I said this on a quick TikTok that I made. If you cannot make a plot hook without involving racism, uh, don't be a writer. Don't make things.
Seriously,
Uh,
seriously, it
because that's
is.
lazy.
It's beyond lazy. It's also boring.
Yeah,
It's
it's
Really
lazy, it's boring, and it
boring.
makes you a piece of shit. So don't do that.
Yeah,
And that's why like giving reasons for things like there was a treaty signed and the treaty was broken. Okay, that makes sense that why the dwarves and elves would hate each other.
yeah,
But if
yeah.
it's just well they're tall and I don't like their accent, you jump off a cliff.
There's a great episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine where
Mm,
there is a border disagreement because what had happened is apparently this river was supposed to be the border, and there was seismic activity that caused the flow of the river to change. And the group that got more land out of it were like, "This is great,
great.
the river moved, this is our land," and the other ones were like, "No, no, 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 no. We clearly meant where it was." There it is. Like
Yeah.
I always say, steal from everywhere. That's great because there is a
Oh,
certain level of I actually see what both of them are saying. I mean, the ones that took the extra land, they're being literal dicks about it. They
absolutely.
really are. You knew what they meant, but at the
Yep.
same time, them saying river moved. We said the river was the border. We didn't move it, so
Yeah.
them's the breaks. Those are two sides where I'd say, yep, I see why they hate each other, and I'm actually
Yep.
interested, invested, because then at that point, your players can decide: do we want to be
Mm-hmm.
mediators on this? Do we want to try and resolve this? Maybe they don't, and also don't punish your players for not wanting to solve everyone else's problems.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah. Definitely make that problem have like consequences in the world, but don't
yeah,
make it solely your player's problem. Uh, and I can say that earlier on in my DMing, I was guilty of that because I'm a bit of a bastard.
sure,
I like everything having consequences that the players actually see. And the only way that I could, it was also the fault of a little the fault of my players for my first couple of campaigns that I ran
yeah,
because I was playing with people that had hard main character syndrome, and so if it did not directly affect them, they would not pay attention to it, uh,
sure.
which is a whole other thing. Um,
It is, but it also goes into another aspect of what's important in world building is building something in your world for each of the characters.
yes.
Um, Not everyone can be the star of every session.
Yep.
And just because of how certain classes are built, some characters are going to be the star more often. Let's
Yep.
face it. If you have a party face amongst your player groups, they're going to be the star of a lot of the role playing sessions
Yep.
because your characters are probably going to go, "Oh, you're proficient in persuasion and deception and you have a high charisma. Why don't you talk to them?"
Yep. But like, and what's great with what you can do with world building to get in the way of that is if your players go to a character's hometown,
Yeah.
you can very easily make that hometown a bit distrustful of outsiders. So then your low charisma fighter has to be like, "Oh, I guess I am talking for everyone now.
Yes.
This is wonderful. I'm bad at public speaking." And it
Yeah.
can be really fun.
Find a way for some of those characters to have to step out of their comfort
Yeah.
zone a little bit.
And it's really
Maybe,
easy to do with your world building with
yeah,
incorporating your players' backstories into things. Uh, One thing that that popped into my head that I really want to mention with world building is we talked about it a little at the beginning about taking things bite by bite and step by step.
yeah,
I don't just mean with like geography. I also mean with your story itself.
yes,
You don't have to have everything planned out, and you really shouldn't. You should have like the big milestones, but the in between, you can let that be your party just exploring what you've built.
and and let your players tell you through their actions what kind of story it is
Mhm.
they want to live through. You know, I believe that the session zero is very important for both the players and the DM because
Mhm.
it's important as a DM to let them know, hey, this is the tone of the story I want to run. This is what it's going to be based around. Here's kind of what I'm seeing it. here's I granted I don't really use the alignment system for much other than
Mm.
conversation because people understand it. So I might say good to neutral characters would fare best in this.
Mm-hmm. There's
Um,
actually a thing that we should touch on and talk about in the future when we've had the time to look it up because I haven't yet.
yeah,
But like Magic the Gathering has their color alignment chart,
yeah,
which people are talking about incorporating into D&D, and I think it's a cool idea to have a switch away from the alignment chart.
I do
Uh,
too.
I mean, I still really like the alignment chart, but that's a whole other conversation.
I think it's a great I use it as a tool of guidance for helping build a
Yeah.
character, just to help get an idea of what their personality is going to be like
Oh,
overall.
talking about alignments reminded me of another thing for world building. Not every kingdom has to be run by an evil monarch.
Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you. You are
Sometimes,
allowed.
yeah, I mean, I know eat the rich, but this is a fantasy world, and all
Yes,
of your rich people don't have to be bastards. Um,
correct. You can have a empress who is just she is loaded with riches and she is kind
yep.
and her kingdom wants for nothing. And okay, there is still poverty, but she does everything she can to increase the livelihood of
Hmm.
everyone because
It's
it's her belief that people who live happy, fulfilled lives make a stronger kingdom.
Yep. One of my favorite things narrating in a campaign is when you have, because there is going to be at least one of your players that is like, I grew up a street urchin, uh, because it happens. There are only so many ways a character can grow up
Yep,
and go out of adventuring eventually, and one of them is I was a street urchin,
yep.
uh,
Parents
and
are dead,
so
have no money. Let's go on
being
an adventure.
able to being able to have different levels of poverty in different cities is
Yeah,
huge. Like you have the city your character one of your players characters grew up in, their poverty is like how did you survive?
yeah,
And then you have the kingdom that like we were talking about with the kind queen where like oh, your poverty is like middle class for my home,
yeah. You're like, oh, you had a roof?
right? Like you you
Wow.
you didn't sleep in a repurposed barrel?
Yeah, it's like, that sounds lavish to me, yo.
Yeah.
So that is an interesting thing to have is, but yeah, I think your point of not every kingdom has to be ruled by this, you know, vile monarch. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a great trope to lean on
Oh yeah.
sometimes. But have legitimately good people in high positions in your story. It's more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
And also, eschewing the like this kingdom is good, this kingdom is bad for just this ruler is lawful.
yep,
That's a really fun dynamic to put into your worlds. Like this place is run by someone that's lawful. Very much like, all right, the people are gonna hate this, but this is how our laws are stated.
and then you know what you do with that lawful ruler? You have them seem very just, mostly kind. They're
Mm-hmm.
generally liked, and then you have it where someone within the town who is universally beloved and maybe even a close friend of that ruler commits an offense
Mm-hmm.
that the punishment is death.
Yep.
And that lawful ruler must carry it out. And it makes for wonderful tension,
Mm-hmm.
especially if this NPC that they're going to be killing is a friend of the parties.
Oh, absolutely.
Now they have to decide, do they let justice be carried out or do
Mm.
they become enemies of the crown
Yep.
by trying to rescue this person?
Oh, and one other thing in world building. I'm just trying to throw all my ideas out as we get to the last couple of minutes of the episode.
Now I feel you.
But a thing that I am stealing from the same friend that also did the questionnaire over Christmas break for us for our characters to help with world building. But he had in his world a thing called the City of Manifest.
Okay.
And the City of Manifest, basically strong-willed souls, rather than passing on to the outer planes and to whatever plane their deity resides in to exist for their afterlife, a strong-willed soul could still exist on the material plane in the City of Manifest. And
I
while
like
they're
this.
within the city, they still have a corporeal body. But as soon as they get too far away from the city, they get sucked back.
Okay.
And so, if a player dies and you don't have resurrection yet, you can totally turn a quest into going to the City of Manifest and seeing if they're still there, or having a character like end up at the City of Manifest and their dead parents are there, and having like story arcs in the City of Manifest to like try to get some old information and whatnot. It's just a great city to drop into your world because it opens up all of these like weird afterlife-y plot hooks that you can do. And it's as simple as making just a regular ass town, but also just about everyone living there is dead.
Yep. Yep.
And it's not like this weird necromancer undead thing. It's just this city happens to be close to a portal to the outer planes, and souls that have a little bit of force of will to them can stay.
I think one of the last things in world building that we touched on a little bit but haven't said blatantly is there is an easy way to use your players for this without even worrying about backstory or anything like that. Before you start a campaign, adventure, however long it's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
ask your players what kind of stories they're interested in playing. And a great question to ask is there anything you've never done in D&D that
Yeah.
you've always wanted to do? Just ask them, because the answers can be very simple. And this I also stole from Dungeon Dudes, where
Oh,
they
yeah.
might go, I've never killed a god.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's late game content.
Yep.
But that's like, I'm making a note of that. They might
See,
go, I want to pull off a heist.
Yep. See, for me, if I was asked that by any DM, it would be, I want to be a sky pirate. Because I've had 3 different campaigns where we were on the precipice of sky piracy and then we didn't do it. And so I'm just like, I want to be a sky pirate. Sky pirate me
hang
daddy.
out with a sky pirate in my campaign.
That's true. That's true. But we didn't get to be them.
No. You fought a dragon with them, though.
That's true. But we didn't get to be them. We're so close. But we had other more important things to do than sky piracy.
Fate of the worlds. Damn.
It's damn world-ending nonsense. I just want to be a sky pirate.
All right, so I will put notes about sky piracy in campaign 2 for you.
No, it won't fit with that character. I usually never play lawful, but this time I am.
Oh man, the campaign where it would totally work, and now you're like,
God damn it. I mean,
Okay.
you're already looking up cool things like gunblades. I'm playing a gunslinger now.
All right, maybe my next campaign I'll just completely base it off of Disney's Tailspin. You can have your sky pirates.
Just gonna do everything I want in the campaign where I've made a character that doesn't want to do any
I
of
mean,
that.
the next one after this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Cape Suzette, baby.
That would be the greatest thing. Just you give me all of these things that I want for almost all of my other characters I've made, and this one where I'm going very differently, that's the one.
I know, right?
It's
always the way. It's always the way.
This is the way.
I know. Struggle's real, my friend.
This is the way. Oh! One last thing, because we talked about sky piracy.
We did.
One of the first things you want to do with your world building, besides picking genre, in my opinion, one of the first things you want to do besides picking genre is picking the level of Magitech.
Yes.
Because that informs a lot. like having airships. Are there airships? Are they
Yeah.
abundant? Are there only a few?
Or even beyond that, I would say determining the level of magic itself.
Also, yes.
Like, how rare are wizards?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have it where even casting Mage Hand is a huge deal.
Yep. Or like casting Mage Hand as a wizard. Makes sense. Everyone gets it. Casting it as a sorcerer. Wait, fucking what?
Yeah.
Because
So
those are
no, I
huge,
agree.
huge good things.
Magic and Magitech both really think about how much of it there
Mhm.
is in your campaign and let your players know.
Yep.
Especially if they're playing a spellcaster.
Yep.
It's really important to let them know, oh, by the way, if anyone sees you cast a spell, they may try and burn you alive.
Yeah, by the way, your magic is illegal in 3 countries.
Yeah, which can always be fun. Think about laws. There's so much.
Oh, yeah.
Think about this. Think about this.
Fuck.
Have laws that have punishments for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talked about guards a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. But we are running out of time, and I cannot miss my food prep before before Exandria Unlimited because I need to watch it.
It's so good.
I believe it is, even though none of the characters have stated so far that they are bi. I think it is bisexual necessary literature,
You're
because
not wrong.
all of their characters act like disaster buys, and I love it.
Welcome to the summer of Abria.
I know, right? Holy,
She's amazing.
get hip, my dudes. Get hip.
What an amazing DM.
Yeah,
And frankly, anybody who has anything negative to say about her, I see how jealous you are. That's fine.
right. It's 100%
Like-
jealousy.
You're jealous. She's DMing
Uh,
for both Dimension 20 and Critical Role right now. Don't worry. I'm jealous too. I
Yeah.
am.
You know what I'm most jealous of? Her fucking hair is immaculate.
It really is.
Holy
It really
shit.
is. But I also recognize there's a reason she's DMing those shows and I'm not, because
She's fucking good.
she is so good.
Anyway, this is just gonna devolve into an Abria Love Fest, which
Yeah.
maybe we should do for an episode just to get it out. Because we could easily talk for an hour about amazing things that Abria's done.
Easily.
But we should go. We've got
Yeah,
stuff
on
to
that
do.
note.
Bjorn, what do we always say?
Do something nice for yourself this weekend.